This part of the video series is going to be talking about the features of progressive web apps and how they compare now to native apps. So the game changer for me is offline access for your web application. It works in a very similar way to a native app at the moment, something like Facebook for example. If you open up your app and you haven't got internet access, you will still have content delivered that you've previously viewed. This will work in the very same way with a progressive web app. So progressive web apps are actually a lot smaller in file size than a native app. For example, the Twitter Lite PWA is actually around sort of 500-600 kilobytes, whereas the native app for iOS is around 25 megabytes, and that can have some significant storage and speed issues. So the advantages that native apps have over progressive web apps at the moment is the accessibility through app stores, and the searchability and the promotion that they get with that. I think over time the native apps and the progressive web apps will be mixed together within a single app store. There are currently some progressive web app stores available. If you go to appsco.pe, you can give that a test. And there's also some really good instructions on how to actually install progressive web apps. Something different that progressive web apps do offer over native apps is actually downloading them directly from websites. They don't have to go through a review process for something like the Apple Store, so I think that gives us a clear advantage. So with progressive web apps, we can actually utilise banners within browsers, and that means we can kind of promote our own web applications on a triggered event. So when people land on your website, you can give them 30 seconds and then pop up a banner saying download the progressive web app. I think this is a real advantage over native apps. As with a native app, when you download your progressive web app, you'll get that icon on your desktop, your phone, on your tablet. When you launch the web application, what will happen is you'll get, technically it's a browser screen, you're still viewing this through a web browser, but you'll get that full screen. You won't get the bar at the top or any of the controls. That allows you to create a much more immersive experience. One of the advantages of progressive web apps is the updating. Because they're just a website, every time you access the app, you are getting the latest application. One thing that native apps has always done really well is the push notification. Something that triggers an action that brings you back into application. Progressive web apps now have access to this, which is a big step forward, and I think it blurs the lines a lot more with those native apps. One of the really good things about a progressive web app is that because it is essentially a website, the traffic that goes to your application is counted towards your SEO. It's traffic that goes onto your website. You can track that with analytics, all your different tools that you may be using, and you can get a good understanding of how people are using your application. The main advantage of a native app is access to hardware, that processing power for things like games. They'll also have access to contacts, phone settings, FaceTime, things like that, Apple Pay, whereas web applications at the moment won't have access to those. It's all restricted. So overall, progressive web apps have taken a massive leap forward, but there's definitely still a space for native apps, and I think there always will be, purely for the hardware access. I think they're going to have that processing power that we're going to need for things like games. Progressive web apps, I think this has opened up a massive opportunity for people to develop cost-effective solutions and really kind of bring their stuff into the market. The third part of this video series, I'm going to be discussing the future of progressive web apps, where this is going to go, some examples and some ideas on how this can be used.